Dada is an art movement that started around 1916 in the midst of World War I. There's some disagreement about what the word means. Some say it means yes, yes in Romanian, and others say it means hobby horse in French. But an equally compelling idea is that most Dadaists thought of it as a nonsense word that didn't belong to any national language. I'll just talk about a few general characteristics of Dada using a couple examples. Here is Man Ray's The Gift from 1921. Lots of Dada artworks take something useful and make it useless. So here, the artist takes an iron, which would usually be used to press clothes, and alters it so that it would shred any clothes it touched. Dadaists also explicitly challenged the institutions and conventions of art. In 1917, in Fountain, Marcel Duchamp took a urinal, wrote a pseudonym on it, and submitted it to an art show in New York that had promised to take all comers. When the show rejected the urinal, they were shown to be hypocrites. So what constitutes the artwork is as much the story surrounding it as the object itself. Duchamp called such found art objects ready-mades. He takes useful objects, puts them into the environment of an art show where they will be useless, and thereby challenges conventional conceptions of art as composed of finely crafted, beautiful objects. Here is Hat Rack from 1916. Works like this have prompted some to assert that Dada involves anti-art. Dada also frequently involves nonsense and other forms of language that challenge conventional reason. This example, which I'll have more to say about later, is one of Hugo Ball's sound poems, in which he promised to use only words that no person had ever used before, nonsense words detached from ordinary meaning. He did so with a political rationale based on ordinary language's role in creating the conditions for World War I. The war is also a crucial context for Dada. Lots of the artists who played a role in creating Dada were explicitly avoiding participating in the brutal slaughter, and if art had played a role in glorifying war, then the Dada response was to reject art as it had been known before and to seek new unconventional possibilities for what art could be. One place a lot of these draft daughters converged was in Zurich, Switzerland, where in 1916, artists including Christian Jara, Marcel Janco, and Hugo Ball put together a strange variety show that mixed poetry recitation, music, visual art, and various kinds of art stunts. They called it the Cabaret Voltaire, and they used it to confront the public with performances that most people would not have recognized as art. The Cabaret Voltaire is where Ball performed his nonsensical sound poems in a cardboard costume that looked at once like a cubist figure, a bishop, and a giant bird. By avoiding ordinary language, the language that journalists use, and the national languages that helped define national identity, he rejected the language that he thought had caused the war. When he read the poetry, the audience laughed. That kind of laughter is another characteristic that binds Dada together as a movement. Many Dada works were so over-the-top strange that they seemed to willfully invite the laughter and ridicule of a skeptical public. Of course, Dada was developing at the same time in other locations. Duchamp and Francis Picabia were in New York, and soon Dada spread across Europe, too. Max Ernst, for example, helped spread Dada to Paris. After Richard Hulsenbeck left Zurich, he went to Berlin and met up with artists including Raoul Hausmann. Here's one of Hausmann's collage-like assemblages, ABCD Self-Portrait, from 1923. These photo montages, characteristic of Berlin Dada, built on cubist collage techniques, yet feature an even more chaotic mixture of image, text, and meaning. The international nature of Dada was in keeping with the movement's suspicion of national identity, which it blamed for the horrors of the war. In this painting, Republican Automatons, from 1920, George Grosch, another German Dadaist, depicts German patriots as flag-waving robots who absorb official language like unthinking funnels. Berlin Dada was also interested in language, though. One of my favorite Dada texts is Kurt Schwitters's Cow Manifesto from 1922. In it, he proposes a plumbing system that will link a faucet in every person's home to the udder of a distant cow to maintain the milk's farm-fresh purity, in a hilarious parody of modern convenience. Schwitters also built on Ball's sound poetry. His Ursinade, which he started in 1922 and continued updating for at least 10 years, is a much larger-scale sound poem with several movements, all of them using nonsense vocalizations similar to those pioneered by Hugo Ball, achieving an even closer mixture of language, music, sound, and chant. Like other avant-gardes, Dada had an emphasis on merging art with ordinary life. Some Dadaists sought to live their lives as a kind of performance, merging the aesthetic and the everyday. Here is a Man Ray photograph of Marcel Duchamp in his Rose Célavie persona, a punning name that means Eros, such is life, in French. The Baroness Elsa von Freytag-Loringhoven represents one remarkable case of a person choosing to live their life as a Dada performance. In New York, the self-proclaimed Baroness wrote sound poetry, wore outlandish clothing, and became something of a legend in Greenwich Village. She devoted her life to acting bizarre. Margaret Anderson says she, quote, leaped from patrol wagons with such agility that policemen let her go in admiration. She pursued a romantic interest in William Carlos Williams ferociously, repeatedly attacking him and insisting that he, quote, needed to contract syphilis from her to free his mind for serious art. The Baroness is one of Juna Barnes's models for the Robin Vogt character in Nightwood. Like the Baroness, Barnes's somnambulist lives a life that coexists with, but somehow seems artistically separate from, those of the people she surrounds herself with, infusing every one of her encounters with a confusing aestheticism. Dada influenced more mainstream texts too, though. Spring and All, for example, finds Williams under a heavy Dada influence. Not only does he probe questions of anti-poetry in the volume, he also makes logical assertions that refuse to hold together. And in poems like The Red Wheelbarrow, he makes use of found objects for poetic effect. In the end, Dada has an interestingly split legacy. It's at once the ultimate modernism, the wholesale rejection of old modes of art in favor of the excitingly new. On the other, it was a comic commentary on other, more putatively serious modernisms, mocking the idea that an embrace of serious art could save modern society.